Thanks for tuning in to this episode of I Have Something to Say, where subject matter experts are unafraid and unapologetic about sharing their perspectives regarding issues that impact our lives. They speak up because basically they give a shit. So if you're tired of canned answers and want to finally hear real people cut through the BS and talk about real issues, this is the podcast for you. I'm your host, Sami Heyman Marrero from Urbander, and behind our mixer is our producer, Chris Majoka from UdoU. Hi, everyone. Welcome to this Roundtable edition of I Have Something to Say. I'm very excited because, look, I figured out how to use a green screen. Thank you, Chris. I'm going to do some fun things. They think I'm crazy, which I am, but now this is just opening up a whole other world of craziness. I hope you like my halo. I'm just being stupid right now. I just love it. Anyway, so because I'm not technologically inclined, so to me this is like a big deal, right? So, hi everyone, how are you guys?
Good. Everybody's good.
Good. We've been busy, and we figured we'd share. About there's a lot of business opportunities out there, point blank. A lot of people finally, I feel, investing in entrepreneurs, in new business opportunities, and exploring new ways of doing things, in people of color too, in entrepreneurship of color. It's like, really, it took a pandemic for people to finally invest in communities of color. Well, thank you. I'm not going to say too little too late, because we'll take the help, right? But so there's just a lot going on out there, and a lot of initiatives that really inspire and give hope that there's going to be okay. We pray for everyone that's going through hardship. Reinvent yourself, try to find, a team of people that can cheer you on, that can really help you grow, new opportunities, learn a new skill. Just look at this as an opportunity to expand, right? What sometimes we're so caught up in what's right in front of us, and sometimes we just have to push ourselves and challenge ourselves to seek new opportunities and break out of our shells. And so one of the things that we wanted to share was how we're aggressively pursuing requests for proposals, opportunities to do business with, bigger entities, bigger organizations, and just going for it, with confidence, with fearless. And sometimes it's like, holy crap, are we really, look at this. Are we really putting this together? And it's happened several times in the last 8 weeks. And so we just want to share with you how we go about doing it, to see, if it may spark an idea, and contribute to other people also finding ways to grow. Right. And so every time we bump into an opportunity, my thing is send it to Shalonda. She does the first review. She wouldn't even bother. Right. And so I'm going to pass it along to Shalonda. Go ahead, Shalonda. Take her from here.
Well, you're right, Sammy. We do take like a relay race approach to looking at RFPs, and I'm usually the first one that gets it. But when I go through the RFP, I go and I look at two areas primarily before you start investing too much time and too much resources, spinning your wheels on something that may not even be beneficial for your organization. And I go straight to the eligibility section. Are we eligible to participate in this RFP process? So if it's for minority women business owned, wonderful. If it's for profit, wonderful. If it's a nonprofit, then we may be able to bounce it to SOS by Urbander.
Yeah, send it to Luna.
So depending on the eligibility requirements, then we know whether or not we can actually participate. Once we pass that hurdle, then I look at the scope of work. And the scope of work really tells you what the solicitor is looking for, and really the extent of what's needed in order to fulfill the proposal once you are awarded, if you get it. And so typically when I'm going through that, I'm looking at, okay, what are our capabilities? Can we fulfill it completely amongst our urbander and UdoU team? Or do we need to bring in a strategic partner that we might have to be able to work on this particular proposal? Or is it possible that we might have another partner that can come in as a primary and we come in as a sub? So depending on the scope of the work, based on the timeline that it's involved, based on the scope of the work that is involved and the quality of the product that they're looking to produce at the end of the day, that's what we're looking at. So those are the three areas that we try to determine if we can fulfill it.
Right, totally. And just to give you a general, because some people might hear RFP, what is that, and so it's a request for proposal. And basically, a lot of big companies and big organizations might outsource a new project, so although they might have a team internally that can tackle the job, maybe they don't have enough people, or they need a specific expertise, or are lacking just the experience period, to tackle a particular area or gap area within the organization. And so then what they do is they prepare this RFP, and it's a document that basically outlines, this is the situation, this is our need areas, we're looking for people that have these capabilities and these resources to get it done, and these are the outcomes that we're looking to get. I mean, it has more stuff like eligibility and all of this other stuff, and they request sometimes like bonding and how do you say, insurance and all kinds of other stuff. But basic outline, that's what it is, what it is, and so then they're out there. You just have to look for them and start pursuing them. I know that Luna has also been working on a lot of grants.
Yeah,
they're similar to grant requests.
Yes, and something that we also need to look at that's very important are the restrictions, because sometimes there are very specific things that you can use that money for, and there are some things that you cannot use it for. And if you don't have that very clear, then when you write it, you might deviate from what it is expected, and that might work against you when they are evaluating your proposal. So that goes as well with alignment. Is the organization aligned with ours? What is the mission? So you have to do your homework and learn about that organization, because that is going to give you the language that you need to communicate back to them. So that's also very,
what it is that you need.
Right.
And we're seeing both aspects, right? So when we're talking about a request for proposal or vying for some business or an opportunity to get funding, it has the for-profit area, which is what Shalanda was talking about. Are we eligible to support this company in their need areas? Or like Luna was just describing, are we eligible to vie for this grant money or this funding from a nonprofit standpoint to impact the community? Because you don't receive this money and then just spend it nilly-willy.
Right.
There are outcomes and all of this that you need to make sure that you're aligned with. And then it could happen like it happened with Chris and us, to, UdoU and us, we were approached just maybe 8 weeks ago, not even like 6 weeks ago, to come together to produce a podcast for an organization, and we're like, and so then we have to, bring our skill sets together, and so then right, Chris, how was that? It took you by surprise too, right?
and we finally got to really work together how we had been planning for a long time. But yeah, no, it's interesting, kind of like you guys were saying, just finding the right partners to fulfill the proposal. And it was kind of nice that when that request came through was for both UdoU and urbander to participate on that, because they just know how well we work together. So yeah, no, it's been interesting, and hopefully we can continue doing things like that. But yeah, it was an interesting process, and I know Sunny took the first stab at drafting that proposal and just realizing how much actually goes into producing the podcast.
Yeah.
To do. So it was kind of nice actually to get that down on paper and like, wow, this is what we really do.
Actually do. Exactly. Because we've been doing this podcast for almost a year now. And we've been going through the motions without really doing an outline, because we do it right for our audience and to share, the expertise of people in our circles, and invite guests and learn something ourselves, and then share that learning experience with others. But then to have someone call and say, hey, could you help us produce a podcast? And we're like, what? Are you real? Are you being, serious? So, and like you said, it was very gratifying. But then once we found ourselves writing it down, and then, being able to collaborate and putting a price tag on it, and then sharing it openly too, which is critical, when you're working with other partners, and say, hey, is this right? Can you weigh in? I mean, am I missing anything? Or, I mean, is it this deep? Is this detailed, what we do when we produce our own podcast? And so then to get everybody to be able to polish it up, and then be able to agree, on what, those costs are, and how we're gonna, split, the compensation and all of that. It's just awesome when you have a true collaboration and true partners that feel like family, and that you can have these open conversations with, and that everyone's happy. Right? Are we smiling? Is everyone smiling? You can tell
Yes, we're smiling.
You can put me on the spot, Chris. You can put me on the spot.
I think that this is a good example of two things. One, a more structured process like the RFP and the grant writing proposal that you might use to seek additional business, but also how do you convert a passion project? Because the podcast, I have something to say, really was a passion project. I mean, I remember myself, Luna, and Sammy driving down to Miami, and we're talking about a podcast, and we're brainstorming, and we're like, we need to get Chris on the phone. And we're all four on the phone for like 3-4 hours, just brainstorming. It really was a passion project for all of us. So how do you, in these times, use a structured program to go after business, but also thinking about how you can possibly convert a passion project that you love and you're engaged and you're excited about to help you generate some money? Right?
Yeah.
So, but either direction you go, there's still that eligibility component. Do you qualify? Do we make a good match? Do we have synergy like UdoU and urbander? We're familiar now, but also what is the scope of that work that we would want to produce? So
totally. And what are the expected outcomes, and how do you report on that too?
And then the timeline. The timeline and the deadline, particularly with the RFP and the grant applications, are primary drivers for whether or not you're going to be able to meet the deadline for that. So, for example, in the more structured program, the RFP usually has several due dates. So, for example, in the RFP process, they might have a date for you to submit questions about the RFP that you might need clarification on or answers about, and then they would give you a written response. And then from there, you have a certain amount of time before you can finalize the proposal and submit it. Same thing with the grant application, right? That's a similar process, Luna?
Yeah. It's just like that. You have a period of time where you can ask questions, and you have technical support, and then you have the deadline where you need to submit it by.
Right. And who was going crazy 2 weeks ago submitting a grant?
Oh my goodness, I was going crazy. I couldn't sleep. I was having nightmares. And then never plan to submit it the day that it's a deadline. Plan to submit it a couple of days before, because you never know. It happened to me. The system, everyone was crazy using the system. It's a national system where you do the submission of the grant. And everyone was submitting grants, and then the system was continuously falling, on and up. And I was like crazy. I couldn't sleep the night before, and I was planning on submitting the day before. And even like that, it was such a stress Because I said, what am I going to do if this continues to happen? Because if you don't submit it, it's not like, hi, hello, I couldn't submit it yesterday. If you didn't submit it, you lost. The bus left the application, and it's done. You're done.
Yeah.
You need to
and you've
plan for that.
and you've invested all of those resources. I mean, I think that same week while you were stressing over that grant application, Simi and I were working with a colleague out of Atlanta on another RFP, and I'm usually the one who's cracking the whip, like, okay, we need to make sure we're meeting all the requirements. We need to make sure we get all of this done. What is the format? And everybody is like, oh boy. So he's like, now you see what I have to live with. But the deadline is critical because you've invested all of this time, all of these resources, hours of lack of sleep to try to make sure that you produce the best quality product. To miss the deadline is just such, you don't want to do that. It's such a waste, and it's just heartbreaking. So
And then, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Go ahead. No, go ahead. Go ahead.
That you need to have clarity in what you want to do. You have to do your homework and write it down so you know what you want to do. You know what your outcomes are gonna be. You know how you're gonna evaluate the program, how you're gonna measure the success. Everything you have to have very clear on your mind, because then when you start actually writing the proposal or the grant, the RFP, then it's easier because you already know what you're going to do and what you're expecting from that. You can't wait to start organizing when you start writing. That's going to be impossible. Impossible.
And it's important. You can't bullshit your way through it either.
That's true.
There's just no way. Because, people can read between the lines when.
Absolutely. And I mean, even with the passion project that we were talking about with the podcast, I mean, when it came down to what are we going to be able to deliver? What is the timeline that we're going to release the podcasts? That's where we leaned on Chris, because he is the technical person. So you might want to share a little bit about how we went through that process, Chris, because whether it's a passion project or it's a structured program, you're going to have some type of outcomes and deliverables.
Yeah, and you know that the usually the people that review these documents, they're used to seeing those documents. So you really need to be very careful that it's aligned. Because if your budget is not aligned with your narrative, they're going to notice it, and that's a red flag immediately. This is not.
Absolutely. But to Shawana's point, from the technical aspect of things, it's just a matter of finding out what's going to work best. And like, especially right now, I mean, recording podcasts remotely, of COVID-19 and being in quarantine, and how do you deliver a quality product that is going to justify what you are proposing, the compensation is going to be, but still figure out how is that going to work. Even our setup now, we're not even using our computer audio, we're using a phone call because that's more consistent between computers and things like that. So I know we went through a couple of test rounds before we actually submitted a proposal and made sure that the technology we were going to propose was actually going to work. So we got on and it just looked good from a video standpoint. Did it sound good? Did it record well? Were we able to sync it up in post and stuff? So
the green screens, just everything. Learn. I mean, all of this. It's weeks. I should have like a C and do like this.
I mean, the testing prior to really assess the quality is important. And I think we videotaped a couple of those, Chris, so it might be good to do a bloopers video, but not good for a final production.
Even for our ISF at the State podcast here, I know our very first video cast, recorded the whole thing.
You did? Oh, God.
And we had to reluctantly redo the episode.
Yes.
Because it didn't work. So
that's true. Because it sucked. They're like, yeah,
Yeah.
no, that doesn't work. It doesn't sound right, you know? So,
But that's how we learned,
yeah,
which is
yeah,
is kind of exciting in the process. So
yes,
yeah.
totally,
Mhm.
totally. Oh, yeah, I've learned a lot in the last,
Mhm.
what, 9, 10 weeks. It's been incredible, you know? It really, really
Mhm.
has been. So, and
Yeah.
I feel like these new projects to push us to new
Mhm.
territory, you know, and to be more creative. I feel like every time, you know, we get together to brainstorm, you know, it's not those long trips to Miami or to Tallahassee because we can't leave the house, right? But now every time we do get on the phone and start, or if an idea comes up, you know,
Mhm.
we're less not that we were, but now we're bolder, even bolder with throwing stuff out there because we almost feel like it's not far fetched. Like,
Right.
you know, it's like, you know what, it might sound crazy, but if anybody can
Mhm.
figure this shit out, it'll be us, you know?
Mhm.
So it's right, it's kind of cool
Yeah.
because it makes it fun. You know, while
Mhm.
we're stuck, at least you feel like, wow, I have a crew that I can go to and they're gonna say, yeah, está loca, she's crazy, you know, but you know, that might be fun. That might be fun, you know, and also finding partners to work with, like new people. Like we're already,
Mhm.
you know, we're looking at some opportunities that we're looking at other people that we can bring into the table, you
Yeah.
know, like just last week I was talking to Luna about Tiffany, you know,
Mhm.
and how she's starting her own thing
Mhm.
and workforce development. And then, you know, we submitted that grant for workforce development. And if it
Absolutely.
comes through, I'm like, oh my gosh, we can bring Tiffany on board, you know? And so
Mhm.
that's the kind of, you know, stuff, you know,
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah.
that's happening. Those are the new ideas and things that are coming to mind now, you know? So
Yeah, it's interesting that you talk about that because one of the things I think I've learned with Urbander is whenever opportunity comes, the local one
yeah.
usually says yes. And where everybody is like, what?
Yeah.
But she's like, yes, we'll figure it out. But it's being bold and it's really pushing yourself beyond what you think
Mhm.
you're able to do, just slightly outside of your comfort zone where that growth area is really, really exciting. And I think one of the things that with RFPs, you want to stay within the scope, but you also want to infuse a level of creativity and differentiation as to why you would be the
Mhm.
best candidate for that,
Right.
while also
Mhm.
aligning with the wording that they're using so they know that I'm not so departed from what you guys want. I might just push the envelope just a little bit, you
Yeah.
know? So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. That's another important tip. I'm glad you mentioned it. Is that when
Hmm.
you're responding to a proposal or to an RFP, just make sure you use or a grant request, right, for funding, that you use the same terminology. So
Mhm.
if they use audiences, use audiences. If
Right.
they use constituents, use
Use
constituents.
constituents.
If they use
Hmm.
voters, use
Use
voters. I mean, so
voters.
how whatever terminology they use, it's like
Mhm.
literally, this is not too difficult. You copy and you
And you
paste
paste it.
Uh-huh.
and yes, and
Hmm.
then you work your proposal around that,
Uh-huh.
you know. And
Hmm.
so that is critical, and
Yeah,
to
it's like doing your resume. Um, when you look at your job description that
yeah,
Hmm.
you're applying for,
yep,
copy skills that they say are needed and say I'm
And just, yeah.
proficient in
yeah, yeah,
listed. So
yeah.
yeah,
Hmm.
Another
stuff
thing
like
that I
stuff like
recommend when it's not an RFP, right, that you know the person, or a grant request, right, for the nonprofits, if it's someone you know or that you
Hmm.
have an established relationship with or that you've been courting, like a prospective client, which has happened
Hmm.
to us many times. We've been pitching business for 12 years, right? So you approached, this is something I've been doing lately, and I think people appreciate that, you know,
Hmm.
is that we prepare the proposal and we send it to our lead person, our key person in the at the company,
Mhm.
right? And
Hmm.
so, hey, this is a draft. You know, we're putting, before you share it with the leadership team or with the people, right? In your group or your department that will have, you know, to weigh in, you know, can you just eyeball it and make sure that we're aligned with your language, with what your goals are, and all of that based on what you told us, you know, that you were looking for, and then get back to us so we can and that also, that we're not, como dicen, like they say in Spanish, picando fuera del hoyo, that you're not, you know, shooting blanks also with pricing, you know, that you're really on point, you know, with what their budgetary parameters are too, you know. Now when it's something new, they just don't, you know, they might know. So exactly, so your role is to guide them through that, you know. But to your point, even if it's a for profit, it has to align and make sense. Like the more itemized it is, we went through this exercise, right, Chris? Where are you? You're here, right? Right, Chris? We went through this exercise back in February, right? That about itemizing stuff, you know, and really showing how. Because then I feel like you want to avoid as much as possible giving people sticker shock. You know, because a lot of people are like, damn, you know, $20,000, $30,000, $40,000, you know. But if you break it down and they're like, yeah, it makes sense, you know, this makes sense, you know.
And it also, breaking it down also helps the client or the reviewer to understand. They might have an idea of what they want, but have absolutely no clue as to how you need to execute the work to get them what they want. And so that the itemized process, or even we've done proposals where we've broken it out by weeks. You know, this week we're going to be doing kickoff meeting, pre-prep, you know, then we go into production, and then after post-production, based on weeks, because sometimes people have an idea of what they want, but they just don't have a clue as to the amount of work, the timeline, the cost, the extent of what goes into giving them that nice, perfectly wrapped with a nice bow product, right, that they can showcase. And so that helps with the sticker shock.
But you have to be very approach it in a way that you know that you're the expert in that area and they don't know anything, because you can't assume that they know how you get from point A to point B. They don't know everything that's in the middle. They just know that they have a project and they have a final product, but what's in the middle, they don't really know it. So dilute it like that, then it gives them a better idea of what the project entails and how we are going to get there, and also helps them be more realistic in terms of the time frame. Expectations. Expectations, exactly.
I find that particularly in video work is I especially always ask for like a sample or an example of something that they'd like the end product to look like. Because sometimes it's even more simple than I anticipated, and then it's, you know, really easy. But other times, they, you know, they'll tell me something that's like Hollywood CGI. Let's manage expectations here.
And that's where managing expectations comes in, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, totally.
And don't promise anything you know you're not going to be able to deliver, because it's better to tell them it's going to take 3 months and then finish it in 2.5. Say it's going to take 3 months, and then you're in month number 4 and the project is still, you know, not
sitting there.
Absolutely.
It's almost like a checklist. It's almost like a checklist too. You know, the more details you are without going crazy, you know, it really helps you stay focused and then cross out. And then by the time you cross the end of it, you know, you're like, okay, good, we finished this project, you know.
And the checklist, I think, is different whether you're going to do something creative or you're going to do something more structured, like the RFP and the grant process. So, you know, to Chris's example of doing video production, that checklist, I tend to struggle, and that's when I give the ball to Sami, because she's a creative person. Like, it's harder, I think, for clients to understand the creative process more than if you had an RFP where there's all these very specific sections. And what we encourage, people to do is to follow the same format that they have in the RFP, unless it's saying this is the format we want you to use, so that as a reviewer you can say, this is in the proposal, this is how we're going to fulfill it, this is in the proposal, this is how we're going to fulfill it. So using the exact format helps that reviewer see how you're a better fit. But on a creative side, people say, oh, this is too stylized, or this is too spacey. Well, it's just a font. How did the font become rocket ships in space? Okay, I see what you're trying to say. Maybe it's a little too angular, right? Maybe you want a little bit more curves, but people don't have the language always necessarily to somebody's first. Yeah, and that's when I give the ball to Sammy, because I'm the process person. I'm like, just give me what you want, and I'll get you what you need. But all this creative stuff, you take it, Sammy.
And then when she comes back with all this feedback, I'm like, well, they need to make their fucking mind up. They gotta make up their mind right now, because it's like, you told me tomato, and now it's tomato.
And sometimes it's potato from the tomato. It's like, with tomato, how do we end up with a potato?
But that goes back to Mercedes. Lisa said values, roles, and expectations.
But that's easy to do if the client has an idea or some clarity creatively what they want. But if they're not clear on it, you're still trying to figure out, do they want a tomato? Do they want a potato? Do they want fettuccine with mushrooms and spinach? Do they want a pizza? What do they want?
And that's why the Q&A part is so
critical,
because that's where you get a chance to probe, to really dig deep into the details. To Chris's point, if it's not clear in that discussion, then find me something. Find me something that I could use, an example that I can use as a point of reference. And then it's like, okay. And then you can paraphrase, throw it back, and they're like, yes, that's exactly it. Because sometimes it's just terminology. Sometimes we can't understand each other because, again, you say tomato, I say tomato, or you think that tomato looks like a potato. And it's like, no, it's a tomato, not a potato. And so, but that's the thing, it's like to continue to ask until you perfect, your language, your approach, and and the thing is, every RFP, every proposal, every grant that you write, it's just compounded. It's like cumulative experience that you have that then you can refer to, later on, for other stuff, and actually, quite frankly, do a save as, and just change the name, tweak it, tailor it, and customize it, to the next, the next person. Now, I got to tell you that the best feeling is when you're working on a project that's finite, right? That you're, that had a beginning and an end, and I got to tell you, just in the last week, I want to say we got 2 calls saying we want more of that, so could you send us, a new proposal, to continue this, this relationship and this creative work and this collaboration. That to me is the greatest. It's always awesome to win the first prize, right? To be awarded the first business, because it's like, wow, good, we put our best foot forward and it's recognized. But then to be called on and say, no, we want to continue, that's just the frosting on the cake.
It's like, it's like the difference with, would you do business with this company versus do you recommend this company to your friends and family?
Exactly.
It's like 2 different questions. It's like, they're capable of getting it done, which is great. But when you would recommend this company to the people that you love, that means there's a high level of trust and engagement, which is just awesome.
Yeah. And another key thing is to be nimble. I mean, that's another, especially during these times, that's a term that keeps on coming up when we're doing, I gotta work my nimble muscles. Yes, I know, because you're so structured, you know, and so, And so she's like, oh, don't worry, we'll get through this. I'll hold your hand, Shalonda. I'll hold your hand, you know. But it's being nimble, being able to, accommodate and, quite frankly, run that extra mile. I mean, this is something that we've always done, but Chris has been a great partner in that you get it. You know,
yeah, he does.
Chris, thank you. You totally get it. You totally get it. You know,
they're doing the Brady Bunch thing.
Because it's awesome. You know, when we see an email, he automatically calls and he's like, "Did you see that?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah, I'm on it." You know, and so then it's like, "What do we do?" And I'm like, "Oh, we're just gonna do it." Let's just fold it into the thing. It wasn't within the scope of work, but is it going to kill you? And he was like, no, it's not. Let's just do it. Right? And it's great because that's the attitude. You just have to make it happen. You have to make it happen at all costs and let that experience be so up here that people are like, I can go to the moon and back with these people. And then the beauty of it is when then all of these people in leadership roles talk to other people in leadership roles. They've all, like us, we've all grown within our industry, so we kind of know people, right? So it's the same with the clients, right? And with other organizations in the nonprofit sector. So once you've had a chance to prove yourself, and have run that extra mile and really have, it's like, you need to take your client's business to heart, or the organization or the constituents that you're representing, like if it's your own need, like if it's your own business, like and let them shine, So I think that is critical in all of this, and sometimes we're so caught up with, being in the limelight or, celebrating our accolades and stuff like that, that'll come, but I think that the focus should always be, making our partners, and our collaborators shine and look good, right? Yeah. So any final words, tips on the RFP process, Ms. Shalonda?
Just to recap, you get an RFP, look at the eligibility, look at the scope of work. That's the first cue. Don't waste your time going through all the details. If you're not eligible and you cannot fulfill the scope of work either by yourself, as a sub, or as a prime with a collaborator. Once you've done that, then do the deep dive into the rest of the RFP and look at the language that they're using, look at the formats that they're requesting, look at the deadlines and the timelines that they're requiring, particularly the one with the Q&A. Because once you've reviewed that RFP, if you have questions, you need to get your questions in so you can get better clarity to complete the final proposal. And please, 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 please do not wait till the last day. Use Luna's example. She didn't wait till the last day, thank God. She was still able to overcome the technical challenges. And I don't know, I think the more people, particularly with this COVID situation, we've all been working from home for many, many years. This is not a new situation, but I have to tell you, I called Sammy this morning close to tears because the challenges with access to internet, the internet staying up, using multiple platforms and that's a part of the challenge in this new climate that we're all experiencing. So giving yourself that buffer time to be able to submit so you get it in on time. You don't want to invest all this time and resources developing this badass proposal and don't get it in on time.
Yeah.
So just put in that buffer.
Yes, totally. And if they're asking for hard copies, make sure you get a good printer. That can turn it around in less than 24 hours, just in case you're caught up in a tight deadline. Okay. So okay, good. I think our work here is done.
Are you sure? Are you sure?
Sure. I'm always sure. Yes, I think this was good. Absolutely.
This is awesome.
Yes, totally. Listen, guys, I love you. I miss you. I can't wait to hug you and kiss you.
Yeah.
You know,
And
but,
do the
yeah.
elbow thing.
And then the elbow thing. This is gonna be our little dance. Okay. And to everybody out there, thank you for
Yes.
joining us.
And be safe.
Yes, be
Yes.
safe. Bye bye, everyone.
Take care,
Bye-bye.
everyone. Bye-bye.
This concludes this episode of I Have Something to Say. We want to thank you for tuning in. Don't forget to tell your friends about us. We're on Spotify and iTunes as well. There's more to come next week. And remember, if you have something to say, it's time to speak up.